Hello, everyone. Courts in session, CAS and Court TV. Courts in session. Who's ready for the first lesson? This is Miss Public Info coming to you this afternoon on this beautiful, glorious day. Thank you so much for joining me. We have some breaking news. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of you have heard that there's a little bit of a kerfuffle over at the courthouse at the Diddy trial because we have some of our predicate counts as it relates to the RICO case that were dismissed today. So let's get into it. So the government and the defense right now, they are at this time, first of all, they're supposed to be in a in service right now because the jury has been dismissed from the court until tomorrow where they're going to be hearing closing arguments. So right now it's just the lawyers that are there. They are actually on a delayed start. So that's why I'm coming to you now in between time just to give you a quick update. So on a delayed start, they're doing the jury instructions. But this morning, we all received some news because late Tuesday night, the prosecution lowered a little bit of a bombshell that they were dropping the 3 predicate counts as it relates to the RICO of kidnapping, attempted arson, and the aiding and abetting of sex trafficking. Now, I want to talk a little bit about that because I think people are a little bit confused and they're like, oh my God, the government is giving up on the case. No, the government, and I'm going to read the quote for you guys so you guys understand how this goes. The government, they are dropping these 3 particular predicate charges. Again, predicate are components. Predicate charges are component charges that relate to the RICO. They are dropping these 3 predicate charges as they would like to streamline the jury instructions so as to not further confuse the jury. A jury of laymen who probably would have a hard time understanding the RICO statute. Many of you have a hard time understanding the RICO statute. If I have to repeat the RICO statute one more time for someone, I'm going to scream in my sleep about the RICO statute. I'm kidding. I have no problem repeating it. But I digress. So in order to make this an easier go of things for the jury, they are dropping those 3 predicate counts. And they are concentrating on the 2 following predicate counts, and that is the sex trafficking as it relates to the RICO and the forced labor count as it relates to the RICO. Again, in order to charge a RICO, you have to have 2 components that make it a racketeering criminal enterprise, and they are concentrating on these particular 2, and they are dropping the other 3 so that they can streamline the process. Now, let's get to the government's quote so we can see exactly what they told the trial court this morning. The trial court was told this morning, the government understands the court's desire for streamlined instructions. With that in mind, the government has suggested ways to streamline those instructions, the letter read. Specifically, the government has removed instructions from the charge relating to 1. Attempted kidnapping under both California and New York law, 2. Attempted arson under California law, and 3. Aiding and abetting sex trafficking. The government is no longer planning to proceed on these theories of liability, so instructions are no longer necessary. Okay, so the decision does not change the charges the office has brought against Sean Combs, but it simplifies which predicate acts the jury should focus on when deliberating on the verdict. So what does that mean? So you only need 2 predicate acts for a RICO charge is what it means. So instead of concentrating on 5 predicate acts, because that complicates things, then they're allowing the jury to only concentrate on 2 predicate acts, the sex trafficking and the forced labor. Now, I'm going to take a leap and say that the forced labor and the sex trafficking are likely their two strongest predicate acts that they have, evidence and have a case for. And so that's the reason they probably picked those two out. But they dumped the three that they had because also those were the state charges. And you notice in their quote, they said when they broke it down, they said those particular predicate acts came from the California statute and the New York statute. So those were state charges as well. So they just cut out the state charges and went with these two predicate acts, again, of sex trafficking and forced labor. They made it simplified because what you don't want to do is you don't want to further exhaust a jury who has been sitting in a jury box for 6.5 weeks, listening to lawyers argue back and forth, watching sexually explicit material that they normally don't watch, just having to live in a little bit of a bubble. They're not sequestered, but part of their job is when they leave every day is to go home and not watch anything on the news that has anything or read anything online that has anything to do with the Sean Combs trial. And because this case is everywhere, some of them probably haven't even been watching television, or if they have, they've been just watching streaming or something like that. But my point is, they've probably been living a very uncomfortable life for the past 6.5 weeks. So this jury is already exhausted. They're already just, spent. So they're trying to make it as convenient as possible for this jury so that they're able to do their job to the best of their ability. And I think the jury probably appreciates that. And, they want the jury to be comfortable. They want the jury to feel confident about, going in to deliberate. And they want the jury to feel like they actually understand the jury instructions, which, this is what they're going to be discussing today or arguing for today during the lawyers in service. I mean, these jury's instructions are liable to be as long as Zorro's whip, okay? Because it is seriously, I predict these jury instructions are going to be pages, up on pages. I'm hoping that, it's not in the, double digits or anything like that, but I could certainly see, these jury instructions being quite, lengthy in nature. And I'm just hoping that, that seeing, the jury instructions doesn't exhaust the jury, but they know what this case is. And I think, again, as I said yesterday, I think the jury is invested. You don't sit someplace for 6.5 weeks and it becomes your turn to come up to bat, and then you just say, oh, I'm just, I'm sick of this, I'm tired of this, I'm not doing it. Of course, they are ready to get going. They're ready to get involved in this thing. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes about. Now, if I'm the defense, I might be a little bit pissed. I'm going to be honest with you, because you're dropping these, attempted, arson charges, and you're dropping the attempted kidnapping charges. And that means that the testimonies of Kid Cudi, that means the testimonies of Capricorn Clark didn't need to be in play. So the jury has heard testimony that about your client that they didn't need to even hear, because now here comes the prosecution playing chess, not checkers. It's allowed, saying, hey, we're going to get rid of these charges. Now, it is allowed. It is allowed. You can do it. The jury, can't unhear what they can't unhear. However, I would not be surprised if at some point that in the jury, during this argument for the jury instructions, that the defense makes an argument for the jury not to consider the testimonies of Kid Cudi and Capricorn Clark, because of the fact that they're no longer being, or Sean Combs is no longer being charged for those particular predicate acts. Those predicate acts are no longer part of the case. So I can see them making an argument for it. Now, whether or not Judge Submaranian allows that, I don't know, because even though their testimonies were specifically about those two things, their arguments also, though, and I'm sure the prosecution is ready to argue back on this point, their testimonies also cover, however, other portions that reveal other portions of the enterprise that sort of give an eye-opener into the control of Cassie, gives the eye-opener to the fact that Cassie wasn't allowed to date other people. She had to, be on her job. She had to do what Sean Combs wanted her to do instead of living her own life. This sort of leads into the forced labor of it all. So, also, Capricorn Clark, she gave testimony about, being taken to a certain spot when she was supposed to be working, and she didn't know what was going on. So maybe that isn't kidnapping, but it could lead into the forced labor of it all. I'm not sure. And I'm just sort of spitballing. I've not analyzed this, and I'm not a lawyer, but what I am saying is that the testimonies of Capricorn Clark and Kid Cudi, it could be argued by the prosecution that their testimonies does more than reveal the kidnappings and the arson. It could reveal other things that have to do with Combs' enterprise, with the predicate acts they are going after, like the sex trafficking and the forced labor. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I just want to give you guys that brief bit of news. We're going to come back. We're going to reconvene. We're going to take a break. We're going to reconvene. I'm going to talk to you about deliberating, jury deliberations. We're going to talk about what that entails, the anatomy of jury deliberations, how long it can be, what's the process of jury deliberations. I understand that some people have never been on a jury and they don't know. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to discuss a little bit about, what happens in a jury room. How long can jury deliberations last? What does a quick return of the jury mean? What does a long return of the jury mean? Does it mean anything? Remember to like and subscribe if you have any comments that you would like to make, questions, or just want to just say hi. Comment below, please. I love comments. I've had a few. Yesterday I was really sad that I had to delete one of the comments just because I had to redo a video. But someone made a really nice comment, and if that person, I think it was Under the Radar AZ, if you're out there, comment again, Under the Radar AZ. You're very nice, and I really appreciate you. So shout out to Under the Radar AZ, and shout out to everybody out there. I appreciate you guys. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we're adjourned for now, and I'll see you in a few.